We are living in an age of geopolitical transformation. I mean, it sounds very academic. It sounds like geopolitics 201. Your junior level course in college for that international relations degree. But it's real and it's happening, and it's in many ways it's exciting, but in many ways it's scary because we collectively, the world, have for so long grown accustomed to American hegemony. We can talk about how we're opposed to it, and everybody's like, we're against American imperialism, we're against hegemony, we're against the rules-based international order. Of course you are, except you're not, because you are for stability. And while there is a whole bunch of instability in the world out there, there's a whole bunch of stability that's brought about by this. And people are lulled into a false sense of complacency by the perception of stability. And right now, where this transformation that's taking place from the American singularity to this global multipolarity, BRICS and all that stuff, it scares people because it means you have to put your faith and your trust in something else. Now, if you're somebody who has been disrupted by the American singularity, yeah, you're ready to jump ship. But if you're somebody whose life has been chugging along in relative comfort, it's a scary proposition, a frightening proposition. So it's not, automatic logic where people say, well, America's failed, so we're going to jump on the Chinese and the Russian ship. Well, for many places in the world, America hasn't failed. We didn't get to be number one because we're a bunch of losers. Okay, we did some things right and we bullied our way to the top, whatever you want to say. But America is a very powerful nation that has a lot of successes attached to it. And a lot of people around the world found those successes attractive, especially the political and economic elites who make money off the American singularity. And so this idea that we're just going to seamlessly transfer power over to the Russians and the Chinese, that ain't going to happen. This is a very scary time. And it would be scary if this transformation was taking place in a conflict-free environment. But now we start throwing in the not only the reality of war, but what's that biblical statement? Rumors of war. There will be rumors of war. There will be wars and rumors of war. So we have real war, but we have rumors of war too. Potential of conflict that is generated by the friction that comes from this transformation. It scares the crap out of me. And I think it scares the crap out of just about anybody who's out there because, is the United States willing to go gently into that good night? Dylan from Dylan Thomas here. Or are we going to rage against the dying of the light? And my fear is that we're going to rage, and we're going to lash out, and we're going to create problems. We're going to make as much friction as possible rather than doing the smart thing, which is to smoothly transition and take an important seat at the table of multipolarity. We're going to resist that for as long as possible. And the consequences aren't just going to be economic and political disruption, but it can be, chaos and conflict as well. So as much as it makes sense for Russia and China to step into this Palestinian, crisis and be the leaders to get us out, it's just not that easy. America's not going to give up the role that it's enjoyed for the last, 40, 50 years as the lead influencer in the Middle East region. We're not going to, hand that mantle over to Russia and China willingly. So there's a lot of disruptive capacity out there, a lot of mischief for America to cause, going forward.
Yes, indeed, and perhaps we can close the program on this. You wrote a couple of articles in the last couple of weeks. One of them is for Energy Intelligence. You wrote about, is the U.S. still an essential nation? And you also wrote for RT recently an article about the U.S. military's multi-trillion-dollar fraud. And there were a lot of interlocking, very interconnected points about everything that you just stated. And so I wanted to ask you to close here, with regard to these developments. You are also trying to build a campaign, waging peace. You're trying to develop a film. I'll pull all of this stuff up as you're talking. Given that the United States is spending so much on its military, and all of its maneuvers and its leadership are committed to these maneuvers, point to a pretty disastrous conflict that you say with Russia, with China, and you also have this unresolved and with what's gone on with Israel's onslaught in Gaza. Obviously, still a very relevant point. The Middle East or West Asia, that is still very much a possibility of potential hot conflict. Given all of this, I mean, one, how do you feel like your film, Waging Peace, will contribute to, helping the United States become a more rational actor on the world stage? And two, uh, uh, where do you see this going? Do you see, because on the one hand we have the United States' belligerence is so clear for all of us, but on the other hand there are some pretty stark barriers. A lot of money being spent, not a lot of wars being won, and that could very well lead to massive changes in its own right. So I'll kick it to you while I pull up your materials.
Well, I'm I'm old school American, I guess I will say, is that I have faith in the system. I know if I glance over to the comments, I'm probably going to be eviscerated for saying that. How could you have faith in the system? How can you? Um, Look, if I don't have faith in the system, if I don't believe in the potential of this country, then what the hell do I believe in? I mean, America doesn't exist. It's not, it's not a viable entity. And I'm not willing to go down that route. So I hold out hope that the American people will be able to be awakened by all that's happening around him. I wrote this article in RT, and one of the things I talk in there is about the fact that the United States has grown so accustomed to throwing money at the Department of Defense because we just assume that if we funded it, then America will be able to win every war in the world. And what the American people are finding out is that not only could we not defeat the Taliban, not only could we not defeat Al Qaeda, we can't beat Russia, China. We can't beat anybody. We can't beat Iran. We don't have the ability to do this. And yet we're spending all this money. And so I think there's a growing sense of betrayal. And the idea of, America being the essential nation, we can't be the essential nation when we don't allow ourselves to be essential. I mean, essential means useful. America is essential because you can't solve a problem without America there. But when America becomes the problem, we're not essential. We're the opposite of essential. We're disposable, and that's the world is finding out, especially because America's been operating with this our way or the highway concept. We sanction you if you don't agree with us. We go to war with you, but we can't go to war with you anymore because we can't win any wars because we don't have a military capable of winning wars. Sanctions don't work. And what the world's finding out is, hey, the world can function pretty good without America. In fact, the world probably functions better without America. And so America's got to change the way it's going. If we wait for the government to make this decision, we're screwed. The change has to come from below, from the American people. The American people have to become empowered with knowledge and information so that they can hold the people they elect to higher office accountable for what they do in our collective names, maybe elect better people who to represent us. And so ultimately it comes down to conditioning the minds of the American people, exposing them to new ways of thinking. And so the purpose of the Waging Peace documentary was to build upon the experiences that I had in Russia when I went on a book tour, 26 days, 12 cities, talking about my book, Disarmament at the Time of Perestroika, which is about the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty implementation of the late 1980s, early 1990s, arms control, and how we successfully implemented this during the height of the Cold War and part of this process of tearing down barriers between Russia and the Soviet Union, the United States and the Soviet Union, United States and Russia. It was a wonderful experience. And so I wanted to capture it and find a way to provide it to an American audience. And so I decided on making a documentary film and an accompanying book. And this is the Waging Peace Project, and you can support it on the Scott Ritter Extra.com. There's the ability, you see the ability to donate there. You know, to make a documentary film, I made a documentary film in Shifting Sands back in 2001, 2002. It cost $475,000 to make. That's 2001, 2002 money. To make a documentary film today could be more expensive, depending. I mean, depending on the kind of film you want to make. We were hoping to get one that could be distributed widely, be seen by as many people as possible. That takes money. So any support people can give be deeply appreciated. The film's going to get made. If we have a limited budget, then we operate within a limited budget, and maybe we only do an internet release of the film. That, it is what it is. But the bottom line is to get something out there that can be used to, in this case, attack the disease of russophobia. It's like a I don't want to say vaccine, gosh, that'll get me in trouble. It's an antidote to the poison of russophobia. Russophobia is the fear of Russia. That fear is generated from ignorance. You're afraid of that which you don't know and you don't understand. And with the Biden administration out there talking about Putin, Chuck Schumer, Putin. It's as if this nation of 150 million people doesn't exist, this vast nation called Russia. So the idea is to get the American people to reimagine Russia based upon reality, not the fiction of the Biden administration or of the American government or the American establishment. It's a tall order, but it's necessary to promote what I'm really pushing, which is disarmament, arms control, the revival of a process that's designed to prevent the United States and Russia from committing nuclear suicide. Right now, the last remaining arms control treaty, the New START treaty, expires in 2026. Nobody's negotiating right now for a replacement treaty. What we're doing instead is building entire new families of nuclear weapons delivery systems, both in Russia and the United States. There's a new nuclear arms race taking place as we speak. And without arms control in place to control it, this could spin out of control to the point where one mistake, one miscalculation, the world's over. Goodbye. Das Vidania. I don't want that to happen. And so the whole Waging Peace project is designed to promote a better understanding of Russia for the purpose of furthering arms control and nuclear disarmament so that we all can live. That's a tall order by itself. Now we've complicated it because we got this fighting going on in Gaza, which has sucked the energy out of, the oxygen out of the U.S.-Russia conflict. It was going to be hard to sell that. Now it's, because, American audience is a lot like a bunch of little kittens with a laser beam in the room, and all I have to do is flick the laser beam over there. Now, oh, look at that. Oh, wait, and you get two laser beams going and damn, the cats go insane. And that's what's going on right now. We got two laser beams out there, U.S.-Russia relations in Gaza, and now a third laser beam's entering the scene. And that's, of course, China. And China's emerging role in the world, which again is happening. And America, I think we have a similar problem with China that we have with Russia. Sinophobia, the fear of China, the irrational fear of China, where we blame everything on the Chinese. And in doing so, we're missing out on what's really happening in China today. I had a fascinating discussion with Alex, the host of the show that I was on this morning, about the Chinese car industry. And all us Americans are like, we're Ford guys. I'm a Dodge guy. I got my Ram. I got my Ford 150. I kick ass. You guys do know that the Chinese produce like so many more cars than we do, and that their cars are really, really good. And I mean, come on, man. We are not the automobile capital of the world anymore. We used to be, but we ain't even close. The Chinese are producing cars for a consumer base that is, 1.8 billion people, I think, right? What's the population of China around there?
1.4, I believe.
Okay, I gave them 400 million more than they rated. 1.4 billion. We got 340 million. So they're literally, 3, 6, 9, 12. I mean, they're close to 5 times, 4 to 5 times bigger than we are. And this isn't rural China anymore. That a bunch of guys in, straw hats, with oxen out there. It's a modern country with high-speed rail connectivity, airports that with really great infrastructure, and a lot of cars. And this is a reality that's out there. It can't be ignored. We try to ignore it. We try to minimize it by being ignorant about China, about putting China down, being critical of China without really understanding why. So in some ways, the Waging Peace campaign has to expand. It's not going to stop me from making a movie about Russia. That's still going to happen. And it is happening. And the book about that is being written. But you can't stop there. You've got to address these other issues because they all are connected. You can't speak of U.S. Russian arms control anymore in a vacuum. You have to factor in China. You have to. How do you get the Chinese to that table? That's one of the great questions. Do we wait for China to turn their nuclear deterrent force from 200, 300 missiles to 1,500 so there's parity with Russia and China, so that now you can start talking about reciprocal withdrawals? These are discussions that have to take place, and if they're not taking place, then things are occurring in a vacuum, uncoordinated, and that's where mistakes, miscalculations can lead, and we got problems. So I've created a nightmare for myself, is what I'm trying to say. That if I'm serious about doing this, and I am serious about doing it, it's a full-time damn job that's exhausting. But there are things worth getting exhausted for, and I think trying to create a better world for my children and, God willing, their children going forward is worth, every bit of effort that's being that I'm putting in and other people are putting in. I appreciate the support of everybody, you and anybody who contributes. It's greatly appreciated. I also recognize that, I'm not fighting this battle alone. There's other people out there like you who are doing God's work in trying to inform people about these issues. And if we can all find a way to work together, we might be able to get the American public to wake up before it's too late and empower themselves with knowledge and information and become the good citizens they're all capable of being. And good citizenship isn't just meaning knowing what's going on, but acting on it in a manner that manifests itself in a positive fashion in terms of governance. Get better people in office so that better decisions are made.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think this is a good note to end on. I mean, what you said with the interconnection of all of these developments, and also the fact that, first, I think it's it's a project in and of itself to counter russophobia in the United States and maybe the larger collective West. That's a huge project, given the absolute ferocity that the U.S. and NATO-led political establishment are just so addicted to this, and spread it all of the time through the mainstream media. But the fact that there is this positive element that often gets negated. It's getting negated too, of course, when there's so much suffering, like in a situation in Gaza. We miss maybe the point of why the suffering is occurring. It's not occurring just because Israel is unhinged and genocidal. It's occurring because they're genocidal because they truly are worried about the resistance that has brought back the whole notion of Palestine having any semblance of freedom, that there is this positive force even amidst all of the reign of terror that is being that is being spread across this world by the forces we rail against all the time. And the same goes with, and of course on a much larger scale, with Russia and China. I mean, the things that Russia and China are doing, there is a lot of positive there. Not positive like, oh, we love it, we're so happy, not like, oh, yay, but it's like it is bringing the human race to a better place in parts of the world that, the United States and the West do not have good reputations in. They don't have good reputations in Asia and West Asia or East Asia or the African continent or Latin America. I mean, these are places where the United States and the West don't have the best reputation for the majority of people. Maybe some, maybe some like these particular economic, political, military arrangements. But for the most part, Russia and China offer a real alternative. And and what you said about cars in China, when I was in Beijing 4 years ago, I learned about the whole policy of how do you get people in Beijing to not just drive cars, there's many cars in Beijing. How do you get them to drive electric cars? Okay, well, you make electric cars cheaper, you subsidize them, you make it so diesel vehicles are harder to purchase, and then you produce a whole bunch of electric vehicles and then you sell them. That is how it happens. It doesn't sound so complicated, but it just takes real policy. But only peace can really allow that to flourish in places where we are being deprived, where Biden is literally doing all that he can to stifle the whole electric vehicle industry by reducing the export of key technology, by trying to strangle it. It's doing it with chips too. Gina Raimondo can't stop going off about the mouth about making sure that China doesn't get those advanced nanometer chips in order to build these phones. Too late. They're building the phones with their own chips.
Their own
And,
chips.
and the companies that produce semiconductor technology are probably going to like, regardless of where they are, the US or anywhere else, they're probably going to like a domestic a consumer base that can both buy the phones that use the semiconductor technology and a country that can produce it on its own. They're going to like being able to exchange technology because that's a huge market. And Gina Raimondo is saying, no, give me more funding, the State Department, so I can continue, so I can strangle US tech corporations. It's insane. So this is what we're dealing with. The same with West, as we talked about many times, the West and sanctions on Russia. It's like, let's strangle Russia's energy economy, and Russia will just replace that with India and China while Europe is in shambles. I mean, we can go on and on and on. So it's a lot, but I appreciate that, any focus on russophobia in a moment where there's just not a lot of it, not even on the anti-war movement across the political spectrum.
No, I mean, we are in strange times. Again, that old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. We do live in interesting times. I just had to laugh when you talked about, what was going on with Raimondo and chips. When I was in Russia, the people would just come up and say, "Hey, tell Joe Biden thanks." For what? For the sanctions, because the sanctions have liberated us. We now have a viable economy where oligarchs aren't stealing our money and taking it out to buy, football clubs in London. That money's being reinvested here in Russia, and we're experiencing this economic boom. And again, that's something that most Americans, don't appreciate. Again, you were in China. I've never been there. Maybe someday I'll have the opportunity to go there. But I think, if someone tried to describe China as a backward country to you, you'd say, nah, that's not the China I experienced. If people try to tell me that the Russians are just a bunch of, remember, the Russians have to steal washing machines to get the chips out so they can build missiles. Well, I'll tell you what, the Russia I saw, they very advanced society with a lot of technology, very knowledgeable people, very sophisticated people, very cultured people. Definitely not the vision of, it doesn't match the vision that many Americans have about Russia. So this ignorance is real. We have to overcome the ignorance. And again, I just want to thank you for everything that you do in that regard. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on here and have a conversation with you and hopefully help that process of informing people. Knowledge is power. So hopefully some people feel empowered by, what we've done here tonight. But again, thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.